Hello my brothers and sisters of the Order, welcome back to the Order. I'm Celtic Templar, and today y'all, we are actually doing another Q&A video. And such, it's probably going to be somewhat our shortest, but, yeah. But yeah, anyways guys, why don't we get right into this. Now we're going to be going from oldest to newest, so yeah. What we're first going to start off is, a smart name, let's see. Yes. The Celts were all over Europe at some point in time or another. So why is it that only Ireland, Scotland, Wales, Isle of Man, Cornwall, Britain, and occasionally Galatia are called Celtic kingdoms? And apparently there's actually a reply on this from a famed god who actually puts short answer is the Roman Empire. Long answer is coming in the Q&A. It's not just the Roman Empire. I want to put this out here. Famed God, you do kind of got a point that it might be also with the Roman Empire, but also not just with the Roman Empire. For one major reason. If we put it into, well, our entire history and such, we can easily see that it wasn't just the Roman Empire that actually caused the downfall of the Celtic culture. Majorly because, one, the reason we don't actually, well, do much research on Celtic culture, besides, well, pretty much in mostly, well, the lands of the Celtic Isles, as it's called, or as well the small once nation of the Kingdom of Brittany, is because, well, not just because of Rome, but because of archaeologists. In fact, at some point in time, Celtic culture was all over Europe. In fact, it was in Germany. It was even in the lands as Poland, Ukraine, and even as far as Russia and Turkey. So many people ask, well, why don't people know about it? Simple. Archaeologists have actually somewhat destroyed history about it just to, well, keep their own type of ideals out there. In other words, it's kind of like this. From the 1700s to the 1800s, Europeans, especially archaeologists, have actually destroyed history from Rome and Greece, especially of painted statues. In fact, their original belief, like literally archaeologists, historians, all that, they all believed that, in ancient times, they all believed that the white purity of marble actually showed the fineness of the said culture. But in fact, we all know that's actually total bull. Because one, it'd be like, for example, you looking at the roof of the 16th chapel and seeing nothing. See my point? Because over years and years of erosion and such, and as well decades of said weather and such, it will destroy the paint. And the fact is, many historians have actually destroyed historical type of, well, marble statues that actually had painting on it, that literally like green, red, and such, that which were from faraway lands. And the fact is, they destroyed the paint because, one, they thought, oh, it's just a smudge, or secondly, because they wanted to keep their own idealisms out there rather than, well, be proven wrong. And the worst part is, more than half of the time, they actually destroyed Celtic culture, or mistaken Celtic culture, for Roman or Etruscan. In fact, this actually happened in northern Italy in 1898. They have actually discovered a tomb that was actually thought to have been Etruscan, which was actually Celtic. In fact, it wasn't until like 1914, like it was like 2 months before World War I started, that apparently they ended up doing much more research about it, and apparently found out it was actually a Celtic grave site, and didn't get, well, literally didn't exactly do much effort into research. And what's worse, they actually just archived it and did nothing. In fact, take a look at this map. If you would take a look at this, this is only our modern understanding of how big the Celtic world is. Originally, people thought the Celtic world was just of Gaul and, well, the British Isles. However, this is only our modern example of how big we actually think the Celtic world is. However, many historians actually state it might even be a lot bigger than this. So that's saying something. In fact, the Celts were even in places of northern Italy, Spain and Portugal even, and as well even as far as into the lands of modern-day Romania, such as Dacia, and even also to the Ural Mountains. In fact, there was even a discovery in the early 2000s of a said Celtic necklace, that which was the Celtic torque. Now, I want to put this out here. Even discovering such items like this is very, very rare, to say the least. And whenever we do find it, it's almost like discovering gold, well, pretty much underneath your bed. So yeah, that's actually how hard it is trying to find Celtic culture. And the worst part of it is, majority of people accidentally mistaken Celtic culture for Etruscan, nomadic, German, or whatever. When in fact, Celtic culture is its own culture in general. In fact, there has even been Celtic culture in Germany pretty much up until you get to some certain point. However, it wasn't just the Roman Empire that actually destroyed the culture of the Celts. Pretty much because, one, Rome didn't exactly go far out beyond the Danube and, well, Rhine River. In fact, the Roman belief system is that anything north of the Rhine or Danube was German. That's saying something. And the fact is, that could also be said about Germanic tribes, saying for like the Goths, the Franks and such from Scandinavia, they viewed them as Germans, not as Scandinavians, which is why we get that very, very huge debate even in its time being. But however, there is also a lot worse than that. There is also the Celtic culture that actually lived in the far Eastern Europe that was untouched by Rome or the Germans, and it was destroyed by the Huns. And the worst thing is, Celtic culture is somewhat still in some parts of the said culture. Problem is, though, it was either destroyed by Rome or as well pretty much by nomadic people. In fact, even during the time of the Roman Empire, Rome didn't exactly destroy the Celtic culture, but infused it into the empire. In fact, for example, the god Lu, for example, was viewed as Zeus to the said Romans. So, in fact, in the, governor of Gaul, you could actually see a different variation of Zeus a lot differently compared to that of Rome or in Greece. So, yeah, it was very different. In fact, the goddess Morrigan was also viewed as the god of war for Mars. So in which, that's how the Romans viewed it. So, pretty much, yeah, Rome did that to actually try and keep control and as well slowly Latinize the Celtic culture. Now, this doesn't mean that the Celts were fully Latinized, but in such, Celtic culture is somewhat forgotten because, one, there is even a statue in fricking France that was mistaken to be of the goddess Athena, when actually it was supposed to be of one of the ancient Celtic goddesses of fertility. I want to put this out here. There are so many type of ways I can explain this, but it is really idiotic. But the worst part is, many people don't understand Celtic culture because, one, whenever they, literally, it's like also with the internet. Because whenever people type up, literally, this is the stupid thing that anybody does. They just go to Google and say, I'm looking for Celtic culture. Click. Enter. Oh, Scotland and Ireland. And literally, this is probably one of the most biggest things. I'm not kidding. Most people don't even know Celtic culture. Their biggest understanding of Celtic culture is Irish. Because literally, this is actually how bad it is. Most people, I think it's like 50 to at least 70% of people end up saying that Irish is the only Celtic culture. When a lot of other people like myself, people like myself that know Celtic culture from the past and such, because one, the only surviving type of Celtic culture is Wales, Scotland, Ireland, Man, Cornwall, and Brittany. And as well, there's also Galatia and such, but that's my point. Those are the only areas we still actually have Celtic or somewhat Celtic culture. The reason I say somewhat is because, one, Brittany was slowly absorbed into the French kingdom, or the Kingdom of France. The same could also be said about with Spain when it absorbed Celtic culture as well. So, and here's the weird thing. Many people think they speak French in these regions. They do not. They speak a form of Gaelic that's mixed in with French, which makes it so much harder to understand. It's funny as hell when you see some idiot thinking they know how to speak French or whatever, and they're going to Brittany and such, and they're trying to speak French to a Gaelic Frenchman. It's like someone speaking German backwards. This is what I find hilarious. It's like someone speaking German backwards to a German. That's how weird it would be. So yeah, it's kind of weird, but it's also kind of accurate with Germany, because you can go to one end of Germany and it's a different variation of Deutsch. So yeah, I'm not going to explain that because it gets too confusing. But yeah, most of the time it's because the modern people don't know Celtic culture. And the fact is, the majority of our understanding of Celtic actually came from the Irish during the time of the 1800s to the 1900s because of the mass migration to the United States. In fact, most people, when they think Celtic culture, they automatically think from the movie Braveheart. I don't know about that. They're so stupid. And they don't even think about the country of Wales when it fought against England. Hollywood, look me up. I can help you out in making a good movie about Welsh independence. But yeah, there are tons of reasons why people don't remember Celtic culture. It's not just because of Rome, it's also because of how stupid most people are nowadays. Because one, most people don't realize that Celtic culture was actually absorbed by other nations. One, there was Scotland, Wales, and Ireland that were absorbed into Great Britain, the same with Man. And as which, there's also Cornwall that was actually slowly absorbed by the Saxons. Then there's also the said infamous form of Brittany that was absorbed by, well, the French. And the said same goes with the said Celtic culture in Spain. Now, here many people already ask, but wait, what about the Celtic culture during the time of the Roman Empire? You said that it thrived. Yes, it thrived, but when Rome fell, guess who took charge in the West? The French, the Goths, the Vandals, the Lombards. Hell, those guys pretty much subdued the Celtic culture in general and slowly emerged it into their own. Which is kind of why it's kind of weird to even talk about, because one, if we take a look in history, in fact, here's the thing. Anybody from France or Spain, Portugal, or even northern Italy, or pretty much also Italy, I guess, and as well Germany, and even, well, British Isles, here's the thing. Get yourself an ancestry type of DNA swab. No, I'm not talking about that idiotic spit in a tube. I'm talking about doing it the old-fashioned way by doing it with your blood. Your blood actually has more DNA than your spit. Because one, saliva has a mixture of DNA from, well, anything you put in your dang mouth. So I really wouldn't recommend doing that. So yeah. Because one, I've done it before. Used the blood DNA to actually, well, find out my ancestral heritage. And lo and behold, I ended up finding out I have Welsh, Scot, Irish, and as well, pretty much, Gaelic. That's right, Gaelic. As well, Scandinavian and so on. Mostly European, so yeah. But that's the thing I had to put out here. When we take a look at our own past, it's very, very hard to understand it. But if any of y'all want me to talk about my complete DNA research that I did myself, you'll have to ask me on the next Q&A video. So yeah, but yeah, the reason why Celtic culture is somewhat not told as much as it is, and it should be, is because well, a multitude of things that actually caused it to slowly die, only now to slowly reemerge. In fact, it wasn't until Ireland got its independence that we started to see an increase in Celtic culture. The same could also be said about Scotland. Most people didn't even think about Scotland until the March for Scottish Independence in the 1990s. Or as well, even until we also saw the Braveheart movie. Yeah, that's the thing. So, technically, if it wasn't for film, if it wasn't for the modern film industries, we probably wouldn't get that much interest in Celtic culture as we do nowadays. Now, the reason I got into Celtic culture, or Celtic culture in general, is, well, because I was born into it. Yeah. I was born into the San Antonio Pipes and Drums, and yes, I wore a kilt. I was a Scottish clan of Gun, which was my father's clan, and my mother's was McFarlane or Smith. So that's saying something. But, yeah. But, that's actually how it is. Okay, Terry Newsom asked, why do you think Lorica Scimitarta fell out of favor in the 2nd century AD? This is actually a really good question, because one, I have actually looked this up more times than hundreds of times, but apparently the Lorica Scimitarta does slowly fall out of favor sometime during the 2nd century. And by the 3rd century crisis, it's pretty much almost gone. Now, as I said, it's slowly falling out of favor for one major reason. Or, well, several reasons. One, the high density and costs into making the thing. 2, how long it takes to make the thing. 3, the measurements to make the thing. Now, what does this mean by it? Well, for one, it's plate armor. Plate armor, if y'all know, I am somewhat not a fan of, but as somewhat am a fan of, depending on what it is, there are problems with it, for one reason. Mail you can easily, wove to the body. In fact, it's actually stated that many Romans rather prefer taking the money that they had and spending it on mail armor rather than spending on Lorica Scimitarta. For one reason and one reason alone, Lorica Scimitarta had high cost in manufacturing it. Now, I hear maybe you already saying, but that shows how great it was. No, that actually shows how long it took to make it. And in fact these things actually were costly. Because one, you were actually, for making a Lorica Scimitarta, you actually had to be taking up to at least about a month or 2 to make it. When it came to mail, it only took like about a month, depending on the variation on how it was. And the worst thing, and the really big thing is, Lorica Scimitarta had to have a complete coverage on the body, meaning it had to fully wrap and had to be comfortably fitable on the body. While Lorica Hamata, on the other hand, not so much. It was pretty much just like, well, making a shirt. Because one, you can't use your... Now, here's the thing. Anybody out there that actually is like a first-time plate armor buyer or whatever for breastplates and all that, here's the thing. Don't buy the plate armor on your chest, on the size of your shirt, because one, that is actually the perfect way to actually get it in the wrong size. Trust me, I've learned from experience. And the one thing you do learn, though, is the male, on the other hand, like this, is a shirt. Male shirts, like this, were easy to measure. Because one, you just need to get a good measurement, and boom, there you go. This also says, the same with the sleeves. These were a lot easier to manufacture. Now, there are different variations, but the Romans actually decided on the quicker solution model, which was the Rodin Tuile, I think it was. I don't know if I'm mispronouncing this, but apparently they took what they called bendy iron, which that actually showed what it was called. So in other words, this was somewhat less quality metal, but it depended on what it was. Some of it was high density iron, some of it wasn't. It depended on who you were buying it from or how much it cost. It's kind of like today with modern mail, for example, because one, there's a difference between higher quality mail, and then there is the budded variety, which is mostly meant for LARPing. Then there is historical riveted, and then there is the highly soldered, but however soldered was never used. Now, there is the hammered mail, like is what I have. Now, hammered mail is also known as flat mail. So in other words, it's like, well, being hammered. This took a lot more time to manufacture, which means it costs a little more. But it was a little better than just regular rounded mail. Rounded mail was very, very poor quality compared to this. But yeah, that proves my point though. But the thing is, the Lorica Seeming Tarta slowly fell out of favor in the mid, well, 2nd century. And the reason being, it was just slowly going out of favor, but technically it was still somewhat being seen sometime during the 3rd century, but by then it was already mostly just a hand-me-down. In fact, the Lorica Seeming Tartas, as I said, they were not designed to fit everybody. They were only designed to fit one guy. And the fact is, once a Legionnaire stops using it, guess what? He's gonna have to give it back. So yeah, in other words, it's gonna have to be repurposed. Now, this sounds weird, but the fact is, this is actually how they did it. Because one, it was less cost effective to actually, well, do this in the military. In fact, he's not allowed to own the armor, but in doing so, he does get the money back, I think. I don't know if I'm fully aware of how it was, but yeah. Upon actually giving back the armor, the armor goes into the smithing, and guess what? It's going to have to be refitted. So, pretty much with the time and effort it took to make one of those, many Roman legionnaires actually even stated on how heavy it was. In fact, there was even a type of description from a Roman legionnaire known as Zucarius, of which actually served on the far outskirts of the said Roman Empire. In doing so, during the time of Marcus Aurelius. He even stated on how the type of armor was very heavy, and in such, he even stated on how it felt like as though he was bearing the weight of his entire army on his shoulders while carrying this stuff. Now, he was actually stationed in the area of Britannia, and this gives us a good example. In fact, he even states on how, like, these are mostly memoir type of diaries, if you can put it, like on clay tablets. And he even puts, like, a message towards his family, which, this is actually at, like, type of little outpost somewhere in Britannia. And in such, he even asked to have, like, certain, like, he's telling his family and such, like, what he had to do. And apparently, the Lorica Seeming Tarta was slowly falling out of favor because it rusted extremely easily compared to mail. In fact, if we know one thing, rusted armor is not very good. So in fact, most people rather prefer mail because one, it was cheaper, it was a lot more easy to maintain, and there was a lot of other reasons. But those were the major reasons. But yeah, that's actually not exactly the easiest one to answer. Finally, Black and Yellow asks, how old are you? I am actually 26 years old. Yeah. Not exactly one of the most asked Q&A, so yeah. Not exactly the most epic, I know. But yeah. But if y'all have liked these type of comments and such, and as well these answers, let me know in the comments below on whichever type of video we should, or whenever we should do our Q&A video next. And if we do, make sure to actually check out your community area, so that way y'all know when this actually comes up. Because one, we might do it before December, maybe, maybe not, but we'll see. But anyways guys, like and subscribe for more. Also click that bell button for notifications when the next video comes up. And hopefully see y'all in the next one. Have a great day, y'all.